Edgar lived his life in a world of contempt. His hatred for women was born from a string of betrayals, disappointments, and wounds he never allowed to heal. He despised their laughter, their touch, even their scent. They were, in his mind, the root of all his misery. To Edgar, women were deceptive, manipulative, and heartless creatures that ruined lives. He shut himself away in a bitter existence, finding solace only in solitude and his rage. One gloomy afternoon, as storm clouds gathered over the cliffs near his seaside cottage, Edgar decided to take his usual walk along the rugged coastline. The wind howled like a tormented spirit, and the waves crashed against the jagged rocks below, yet Edgar found a twisted pleasure in witnessing nature's fury. It mirrored the chaos within him. As he walked further along the narrow, winding path, his foot slipped on the wet stones. He felt his body lurch forward uncontrollably, and before he knew it, he was tumbling down the steep embankment toward the vicious rocks and foaming sea below. Sharp pain tore through his body as he hit the jagged edge of a boulder, blood seeping from a deep gash in his leg. He was stuck between the rocks, too injured to climb back up. Panic set in as the tide began to rise, the icy water licking closer to his feet. Just as the waves were about to drag him into the depths, a voice, soft yet resolute, called out to him, "Hold on! Don't you give up just yet!" Through his dazed vision, Edgar spotted an old woman at the top of the cliff. Her face was weathered with age, her silver hair wild in the wind. Despite her frail appearance, there was a strength in her eyes that cut through the storm like a beacon of light. Edgar wanted to scream at her to leave him alone, to curse her for daring to intrude on his final moments, but fear of drowning outweighed his hatred. He watched in disbelief as the old woman skillfully descended the cliff with a rope and makeshift harness. With trembling hands she secured the rope around his waist and with surprising strength for her age began pulling him up inch by agonizing inch. Every tug on the rope sent searing pain through Edgar's body, but the woman never faltered. She whispered words of encouragement, telling him to hold on just a little longer. Her voice was like a lullaby, soothing the storm in his heart, even as the tempest raged around them. It was the first time in years Edgar felt something other than hatred, an unfamiliar warmth. When they finally reached the top, Edgar collapsed onto the wet grass, gasping for air. The old woman knelt beside him, her gnarled fingers tenderly examining his wounds. Her touch was gentle, maternal, everything Edgar had long rejected. He stared at her, bewildered. "Why would you save me?" he croaked, his voice a mixture of disbelief and bitterness. The woman's eyes met his, and in them Edgar saw neither pity nor judgment, only a quiet understanding. "You look like a man lost in a darkness deeper than the sea below. I couldn't just let you go." For the next few days, Edgar remained bedridden in his cottage, too injured to care for himself. To his shock, the old woman visited daily, bringing him warm broth, fresh bandages, and even a few stories to keep him company. She spoke of her late husband, of how she had loved and lost, but never let grief or bitterness consume her heart. She told him of the joys she found in small things, the way the sun felt on her face, the laughter of children in the village, the memories of those she had cherished. At first, Edgar resented her presence. Her kindness felt like a mockery, an intrusion on his carefully guarded anger. But over time, her unwavering gentleness chipped away at the icy walls he had built around his soul. He found himself listening more closely, asking questions, and even sharing parts of his own story. The betrayals, the hurt, the way he let it twist him into something monstrous. One evening, as they sat in silence watching the sun dip below the horizon, Edgar turned to the old woman. "Why are you doing this? You owe me nothing. I've done nothing but push people away, especially women." She smiled sadly, her eyes reflecting the dying light. "I don't help people because they deserve it. I do it because it's what I wish someone had done for me when I was drowning in my own despair. Hate only drowns you in bitterness, but kindness, it pulls you back to shore." For the first time in decades, Edgar felt tears burn at the corners of his eyes. The old woman had saved his life, not just from the sea, but from himself. Her compassion, her unwavering kindness had shown him a light in the darkness he never believed existed. When the time came for her to leave, Edgar found himself at a loss for words. He simply clasped her hands, those hands that had saved him, and whispered, "Thank you." She gave him one last smile, one that seemed to hold all the wisdom and love in the world, before turning and disappearing down the path. From that day on, Edgar was a changed man. The hatred that once consumed him was replaced by a quiet resolve to be better, to be kinder. He never saw the old woman again, but he felt her presence in every act of kindness he performed, every time he chose compassion over bitterness. In saving him, she had given him a chance to rediscover his own humanity. As Edgar grew older, he often reflected on the moment that changed his life. He realized that life is full of challenges, betrayals, and losses that can harden the heart and lead to bitterness. But he also learned that even in the darkest moments there is always hope, sometimes in the form of a person who steps in unexpectedly, a reminder that God works through people to bring light where there is darkness. No matter how deep the despair Edgar found, there is always a way back if one remains resilient and never loses hope. Even when it feels like the world has turned against you, there's a grace that can come from the most unlikely places. Often that grace is just one act of kindness away. Thank you for watching a saga of stories. Please like and subscribe. Leave us a comment about what you have learnt.